Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /ProRevenge, where people literally get their lives destroyed by messing with the wrong person. And in today's episode, it's all about entitled, power-tripping bosses, guys. They're using their power to threaten workers, to fire innocent workers, and one OP tells a story where a boss wouldn't pay him, and OP ruins the guy's life. It's a wild, satisfying episode today, so sit back, relax, and seriously, try not to smile too much at today's stories. When this happened, I had taken over running a small development team of 9 people for a relatively big company. We were there for basic, quick little bits of software that wouldn't make sense to outsource. Things like web apps that quiz employees on policy, along with fancy interactive projects to show off at conferences, or just an extra pretty PowerPoint, stuff like that. The guy I took over from ran the team like we lived in the 1980s, so I brought us into the modern age, and surprise, surprise, within a few weeks, our team was finishing projects left, right, and center. Everything was going great. My coworkers could take smoke breaks and listen to music. Our internal clients were kept up to date with their projects, and my boss thought I was some kind of software prodigy, as productivity had gone through the roof. And honestly, this was more indicative of how bad it was before, rather than anything I did. And then comes Dick, short for Richard, of course. Now, you know Dick. You probably have someone like this at your office. They've been there too long to fire and delight in slapping people in the face with their seniority, regardless of whether or not they have anything to do with you. First, he sends us a project and he marks it as critical. As in, everybody stop what you're doing right now. This needs to be done yesterday, critical. I politely send him a message and I ask him if I could move it down to medium priority, as there was little to no time limit and we had other projects to deal with. He replies with, no, it needs to be done now, so get to it. It's worth noting that he's not my boss and he has no authority over me or my team. So I CC my boss and the other department heads who we had projects for at the time. I said something like, "Hi all, hope you're enjoying your day. Dick's asked me to work on this project for his department. However, he wants it to be done right now, which would delay your projects. Would that be okay with everyone?" Turns out that's a no, so I downgrade his project. Now Dick starts to live up to his namesake. A week or two later, I check our Trello, which is our task management software, and I notice that Shia, a fantastic programmer and a great person, was falling behind a bit. So I go to ask her what's up, and she looks like she's about to have a panic attack. I ask her what's wrong, and it turns out that Dick had threatened to fire her if she didn't start working on his project immediately. At this point, I just calm her down. I let her take a break and tell her to start working on her regular projects and to send Dick to me if he gets uppity. I then fire off an email to Dick and my boss, reminding him that, number 1, any threats of termination need to go through me and HR first. Number 2, who works on what projects and when is determined by our schedule and myself. And lastly, if a project deadline is moved up, I should be informed directly, not via my team. Well, turns out that Dick's infamous for making threats like this, but because nobody took him seriously, I was the first to remind him that he had no authority over other departments. I didn't find out till later, but apparently, the guy had a meltdown at the boss about how incredibly disrespectful I was. He then tried to file a formal complaint against me, but it was rejected because doing my job properly isn't actually a problem. Who would have thought? Right about this time, I had accepted a better job and I was going to put in my notice, but I wanted to wait until after our latest project, which we'll call the Ninja Report, was done, as it was a big deal for my team. This Ninja Report was part of a presentation by a company bigwig, which is the boss's boss's boss. And it was marked critical, so all of us were working to make sure we did a good job and got it in on time. And now, we finally get to the revenge. I'm plugging in a switch under the desk when someone taps me hard on the shoulder, to which I respond, "Just a minute, bud." I stand up and I stare directly into the red face of Dick. He says to me, "I'm not your bud. You need to learn your place in this company, blah, blah, blah." As this grown man's screaming at me in full view of my team, it suddenly dawns on me that I get severance, that I have another job lined up, and really, I have no reason to deal with this. He just continues yelling at me saying, "I want my project done right now." Now, I could have told him about this ninja report. I could have said a lot of things, but I just smiled. I looked him in the eyes and I said, "As long as I'm working here, the schedule isn't changing." Predictably, Dick responds with, "Then you're fired. Go home." So with that, I grab my things and leave. As I'm leaving, one of my team comes up looking like a deer in headlights and they ask what they should do. To which I respond, "Easy. First, I want everyone except you to stop working on the ninja report. Second, at the end of the day, send an email to the boss and the bigwig to let them know what happened and explain that the ninja report is going to be a week late. See you all for drinks on Friday." I wake up bleary-eyed the next day to a call. I pick up and it's the boss and he says, "Hey, look, I'm sorry about what Dick said. He actually doesn't have the authority to fire you. And the ninja report can't be late. We need to fix this." I respond, "Oh, I'm sorry. I've actually accepted another job. But don't worry, I figured this would happen. I asked one of my team members to work on it privately. If they start working on the ninja report again, it should be able to get done on time." My boss then tries to get me to come back, but I made it clear that it wasn't going to happen. I recommended one of my teammates take my job, and I thank him for the opportunity. The Friday drinks roll around and we have a lot to celebrate. The ninja report was done on time, and given everything that happened, it made my team look great. I got a new job, my teammate got a promotion, and the bigwig was really eager to learn why his subordinate fired the lead of the team that he picked himself and nearly tanked the project. I'm also proud to report that the office is now 100% Dick-free. I just love how him firing OP led to him getting fired in the end. Like, what an Uno reverse that was. And guys, I just want to know what his reaction was when the bigwig grilled him and was like, "You had absolutely no power to fire the lead of the team that I put together." Like, some people really have to tone down their power trips. Just like the boss in this next post, guys. It is absolutely baffling, this story. Okay, so I just want to state that this IT issue is going to blow some people's effing minds. The security flaw that this presented was nothing short of incredible, and the fact that we've never had a minor security breach is astounding. It truly is. So what is the flaw, you may ask? Well, everyone in the entire company had one password, and it was the same password. And yes, folks, you read that right. Every single password to every single employee login was the same password. It was like this before I joined the company and for quite a few years after until, well, enjoy the story. Now, what about the username, you may ask? That must be the trick, right? And yes, that was the trick. The username was the employee email address. Now, I did point out this flaw to my management, and their response was, "That's not your area to be concerned about." So I thought, whatever, it paid well, I'll do my job. And then one day, we had a Windows update, which caused the piece of software that I used at work to break. I submit a help ticket, and after escalating this issue, I got to the CTO, as it wasn't a huge company. The CTO says to me, "I don't want to spend the time fixing this, use this workaround." To which I pointed out that the workaround slows things down. It makes my job harder, and this Windows update has to affect more than just me. I was told, suck it up. Now, at the time, the CEO was the son of the founder and a bit of a dimwit. I legit feel at this point in time that he was just showing up, collecting a paycheck, and letting everything run on autopilot and didn't pay attention. But I was mad at the CTO for brushing me off, so I wrote an email to the CEO. It was a short email that simply said, "I discovered a massive security flaw that could potentially expose us to huge liabilities. When would be a good time to discuss this?" And the response was, "What security flaw?" I decided to demonstrate this flaw. I picked 2 random salespeople who I didn't know, and I got their username and I logged into their systems. I then pull up 2 random customers' personal information. And this is the kind of information that would have easily allowed me to commit identity fraud, pull out credit in their names, all kinds of bad stuff. I email the CEO and I explain, anyone who knows the URL to log into our system can log into anyone's account, pull up customers' information, and everyone has the same password. To prove this, I logged into 2 employees' random accounts, and I've pulled up 2 different customers' profiles and I've attached them. One single disgruntled employee could screw us over. 25 minutes later, my phone rings. It's the CEO, and he was nice, and he was very interested in how I did this. And again, this guy isn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. I pointed out the flaw in plain English and the liability it presents to him. I then walk him through the process of hacking my own account, as he called it. And I hate to call it hacking cause it was so easy. Now, it dawned on the CEO that this liability was huge. I pointed out again in our conversation that a single upset employee could destroy us, and the fact that it hadn't happened already is nothing short of a miracle. I then get told that they want me to present this to the executive team so they can discuss a solution. And honestly, the solution is so effing obvious at this point. So a day later, we have the conference call. It's the CEO, the CTO, the COO, the CFO, the company lawyer, the senior VP, and a few other people on the call. I get told to demonstrate the flaw, and I lay out how I, as a layperson with very little IT background, is able to figure this out. And it's incredible that we have this flaw. Everyone's in agreement that this is a huge issue, except the CTO. The CTO gets very, very upset at me, and he wants me fired for hacking the system, as he says. That per our employee handbook, what I did is a fireable offense. I point out that I'm not abusing this loophole at all, and I'm only doing it to expose the flaw because I care about the company, and I think this is something that needs to be brought forward. I point out that a former disgruntled employee could log into an account and steal customers' personal information, and if that was traced back to us, the liability would be huge. I could tell that our corporate attorney agreed with me and was shocked at what I was demonstrating. The CTO then points out that the former employees' usernames are disabled, to which I then point out every employee username is their email address. It would be so easy for a former disgruntled employee to use a different employee's email address that they remember to log in. And since everyone's password's the same, they don't even have to guess. The CTO then points out that we would know who did it because of the IP address, to which I point out that VPNs are indeed a thing. The corporate attorney wasn't actually familiar with what VPNs do, so I explained it. And what shocked me the whole time is the only person in the meeting who didn't agree this flaw needs to be changed was the CTO. The CEO then made it clear that this issue would be fixed by the end of business that day. And there was no ifs, ands, or buts about this. The meeting ended. After the meeting, the CTO calls me privately and he was pissed. I just exposed his incompetence because the system was his design. The decision for everyone to have the same password was his decision, and I know why he did it. He did it because he was effing lazy. So I say to him, "You're a crappy CTO. You shouldn't be in the position you are. You're lazy and you should have found a better solution for my help ticket. This is when he stops and says, "So this is all about your stupid help ticket?" I respond, yes it is. He then laughs and says he's gonna have me fired, and I go, I'm pretty sure someone's getting fired. I'm also super confident that's not gonna be me. Well, sure enough, later that day, we get an email saying that everyone's to change their passwords to something unique. A week later, the CEO announced the old CTO stepped down to spend some more time with his family, aka he got fired. On his first day, the new CTO sends me an email telling me that he wanted to personally work on my help ticket and find a solution around the Windows update, which I'm pleased to say he did. I later had conversations with our attorney at a meeting, and we legit never had a security breach, which is simply astounding. The attorney admitted that was plain dumb luck on our part, and if we would have had a security breach, it would have been very, very bad for us. And this person comments, I had a similar experience. I'm a business developer who focuses on operations. I was contracted in 2016 to come in as VP of Operations for a mid-size IT company. The first thing I noticed was all of their usernames was their first name, last name, and the password was, you guessed it, password. But it gets better. Their main server that runs their entire system was admin. Like a $20 million a year IT company, and their server username and password was admin. When I questioned the CEO on this, he basically told me to fix it because that's what he hired me to do. And this person comments, I would love to make a joke about the CTO being insecure, but I'm afraid that no one's gonna like it. So about a year ago, a new VP of development turned our company upside down by introducing the system of his own invention. And the system was the actual name. The system meant taking any and all decisions away from what he called the assembly line, which are software engineers, and adding a huge new layer of middle management, with the central team of decision facilitators routing each type of decision to the proper decision-making department. But that's not important right now. What's important was that one of the many people emergency hired to implement the system was named Pat. And what makes Pat unique, you may ask? Well, for one, Pat's entire 27-year career was running one dilapidated mom-and-pop shop in a completely different industry. The only similarity to what we did was the word manager in her job title. Second, she was unbelievably slow on the uptake. I've never met anyone like that. She needed a summary of everything, and she was incapable of translating existing knowledge to similar concepts. And I'm not exaggerating. At any time, any topic, she'd be like a recently thought-out Neanderthal, blank state. Last but not least, how do I put this diplomatically? Her wardrobe did not have a single item that would fall under a conventional definition of business-appropriate attire. Now, it's really not my place to comment on that, I know. However, 2.5 weeks after Pat joins the team, one of my developers, a 60-something recent grandfather, was walked out by security because Pat ran to HR in tears about him, quote, constantly staring. She said if the guy was allowed anywhere in her vicinity ever again, that she was going to quit on the spot and sue the crap out of everyone. And I know this is the most controversial part of my story. A few people I've told this to would instantly jump to her defense. If she felt she was harassed, then she was. End of story. Who knows? As an aside, I found it extremely interesting that mentioning the guy's race instantly changed those people's minds. Pat is white, and the guy who got fired was the only non-white person on our team. In any case, the incident that sent her to HR in tears was the two of them walking out of the bathrooms at the same time and the guy smiling at her. It was a 5-second interaction in the hallway. Well, as the guy's direct manager, I got in trouble for allowing it to happen, even though I first found out about it as he was being escorted out of the building. For me, this meant many meetings, memos, reviews, a CC list longer than the actual email, all sorts of drama. After a few weeks, this was finally killed when our in-house counsel advised that without verbal contact whatsoever, staring is really hard to prove as sexual in nature. The end result for the team is a huge hole in our ability to maintain our legacy systems, along with sensitivity training for the entire team, and a giant red mark on my annual review, which did deny me my raise and my not-so-measly bonus. I also had to spend at least an hour a day, every day, educating Pat on basic human knowledge instead of doing actual work, while Pat herself completely dropped the ball on every single thing she's supposed to do. Sadly, the system meant I could no longer make any decisions myself. A single minor change would need to be routed to testing, then integration, then verification, then deployment management, with the assembly line people, the actual people doing the work, strictly forbidden to even touch it without being assigned to it. Since the system meant that I was required to offer at least 2 options for every item, Pat was unable to blindly rubber stamp anything. At first, she would run to me and she had me read everything I wrote aloud, and then explain every sentence and word to her. Then, she'd kick it up to her manager with a please advise. He would kick it back down saying, no, it's your job to figure this out. And that's where it would die. I still can't comprehend how Pat managed to attend daily meetings where everyone was yelling at her about work stoppage, quite a bit of which was caused by the gaping hole left by the guy she fired. Pat continued to do absolutely nothing. After a few short weeks, Pat just stopped checking her email completely. Just like a 1-year-old playing hide-and-seek, she seemed to sincerely believe that if she just shut her eyes really tight, she would be invincible. And the thing is, she wasn't even a bottleneck. Pat was the dead end. One morning, I came in. I looked at the backlog and I realized I don't have the motivation to keep begging Pat to do her job. So I figured I would just do mine. I contacted her boss, who was CC'd on all communications anyways, and I get a spectacular one-liner back saying, "Don't bother me with this, and don't ever go over Pat's head again." Well, a couple of months later, a major part of the big project failed in a spectacular fashion. There was an emergency meeting late that evening, stern faces, all the big brass. That's when Pat and her boss swaggered in. He gave me the look like he was almost sorry I was getting fired. And what did I have in my defense? Well, I had 82 critical and 166 major issues in the tracking system. And yes, those are actual numbers assigned to Pat with no action in months, other than daily comments asking Pat to take action. I also had 72 daily emails from me to Pat with my entire team and her immediate manager in CC about impending doom. At that, she laughed and she said, "Well, I told everyone I don't read my emails, so why would he keep sending these? He should have talked to me in person." Ignoring a couple of raised eyebrows, I produced daily meeting minutes, which proved that literally every single person on the team did indeed bring these up to her in person. And this is her defense. She literally says, "I didn't understand what any of those things meant. How could I choose from options I don't understand? He didn't explain any of that mumbo-jumbo to me." I went right back to the tickets and the daily emails, which spelled everything out in excruciating detail time and again. Pat began to look confused, and she says, if he thought this was urgent, he could have told someone else. As she was saying this, her boss suddenly looks up from his iPhone and horror flashed across his face. I like to think that the slow-motion memory of me whipping out the print of his that said, "Don't bother me with this" email will forever be ingrained in his mind. Pat got fired, her boss got fired. A few weeks later, the VP of Development got demoted, and his successor quickly replaced the system with a common-sense industry standard. This was almost 10 months ago, and from what I understand, Pat was unemployed the entire time until finally starting a new job last Monday. She was terminated from her new position yesterday. I may or may not have contacted her new employer to clarify an error on her LinkedIn, which, as it turns out, also made it into her resume, where she claimed a more senior title and uninterrupted employment at my company. That is absolutely savage how OP double-dipped to really make sure that boss doesn't thrive. And in my opinion, guys, that was totally necessary. Like, OP's truly doing people a favor, because a person like that, being in a position of power like that, well, we all know from that post how things might go at her new job, right? Best to nip it in the bud. And this last post, guys, OP teaches a nasty employer that you should never mess with people's money. So last year, I started working for a local plumbing company that seemed promising. It would pay top dollar to employees for good old-fashioned labor. So I signed my W-2 and I went on my way. Seems legit, right? I started out making an hourly wage, was given my own work van, and was offered a work cell phone. However, if you used your personal cell phone, the owner of the company would pay your bill because you're using your own phone. How neat is that? Fast forward a month or two. I was forced to make commission based off of every job, and I didn't have a say in this, but 20% of every job you go to, that's a lot of money in plumbing, so I was none the wiser. Eventually, I found out that my paychecks weren't having any taxes taken out of them. So I asked my boss, hey, why am I not having taxes taken out of my check? To which he replied, when we switched you to commission, you're a subcontractor now. You're 1099. You're gonna make so much bank now, bro. I just thought I didn't sign a 1099 form, but okay. As time went on, I start working 90-hour weeks with no break. If my phone was turned off and the office folk tried to reach me and they couldn't, they would take money out of my paycheck. The phone bill never got paid. There would be days where I wouldn't make a single dime because the boss would mess up something in our system. We also had no heat in the vans, and when it got to -14 outside, his words to us were exactly, go buy an effing blanket. I can't afford repairs like this right now. And he would say this while he's in Florida on a cruise with his whole family. So like anyone else, I just got up and quit because I thought, F that. When I left, I asked for my checks as I was owed 3 of them for the weeks I worked. But my boss wasn't ready to give them up yet. He says to me, you effed me over and now I'm gonna F you over. You don't get money. I offered multiple times for him to meet me so this wouldn't have to go any further, but he refused. I took to getting some legal advice and I was told to file a wage claim to get my money. But on top of that, I filed a report with them stating that the company doesn't pull permits, which is required to do when replacing people's plumbing. So they sent over an investigator to check these claims out. I then went to the IRS to find out about this whole tax ordeal. I filed the proper paperwork to have the IRS check and see if I was misclassified as a 1099 employee when I should have been a W-2 employee since they weren't taking taxes out. Sure as heck, I was wrongfully not getting taxes taken out of my checks, so the IRS sends an investigator of their own. Now at this point, I see on my phone that I still have their email addresses linked to my Google account, so I do some snooping. Turns out they haven't paid city taxes in over 6 years. And the office manager, a woman who's verbally abused me time and time again, collects disability through the state. But she still collects a $1,500 paycheck from the company every week. And you can bet your ass I sent that in with the IRS. Screenshots included in my email. And this is how it all unfolded. I have a friend that was still with them at the time, and he told me about the investigators coming in. They were fined upwards of $50,000 for failing to produce the proper permits for work that was performed. They also paid me what the company owed me with interest, since I waited over a month for these checks. On top of all of this, the IRS made them pay for my taxes at the end of the year and took away the office manager's disability. If that wasn't bad enough, they audited them because they haven't paid any taxes and fined them for each employee they did this to. At the time as well, all of his fleet vans broke down due to wear and tear. This resulted in the company closing. When he asked me why I did all of this, my response was simply, "You effed me over, so I effed you over." What a revenge that was, and what a fallout that was. And this is exactly why people say don't mess with other people's money. And with all the scumbag business owners out there, it's nice to know that now there's one less out there that takes advantage of people. But yeah, it must have been such a satisfying moment when OP got to throw exactly what the owner said right back in his face. Like, I would be on cloud 9 for weeks after that. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/ProRevenge. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled people episode, where entitled Karens think they own the bar and restaurant, and the stories get absolutely wild. So yeah, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.